The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with shadows and whispers. Tall pillars rose toward the ceiling like frozen spears, and banners of 100 alien empires hung in silence, but all eyes turned toward the center throne where the alien queen stood, her golden crown trembling on her head, her voice cracked like thunder, echoing across the chamber. "My daughters are gone," she cried, her hands trembling. "My little ones vanished from their chambers in the night, and no guard saw the thief. No gate was broken, no trace was left, only silence remained." The counselors, creatures from countless worlds, looked at one another with cold and careful eyes. Some whispered in their own tongues, some hissed and clicked. Others leaned forward with cruel smiles. For many of them, the queen's daughters were not only children, they were the heirs to her throne, symbols of power and rivals to their own ambitions. Rumors had already spread like fire through dry grass. The whispers spoke of human treachery. "Humans are desperate," said one voice. "They are weak and jealous of the queen's bloodline. They want to use the children as leverage," another sneered. "This is the way of their kind, always greedy, always reaching for what is not theirs." The queen's eyes burned red, glowing with grief and rage. Her fists tightened, her breath shook like a storm ready to break. "You dare speak of humans," she said, her voice like broken glass. "But I know what I feel in my heart, and my heart tells me this crime was not of my people but of enemies who hide in shadows." Still the council murmured. A long-necked diplomat from the ice worlds leaned forward and spoke with a voice like a frozen blade. "Your Majesty, with respect, humans are simple and reckless. They lack our wisdom, yet they have courage to steal. Perhaps this is their first strike in a larger plan." Others nod. Hungry to push the blame, the hall became a place of arguments, words crashing like waves against stone. The queen raised her arms and silence fell, her eyes scanning the chamber like twin suns. "Listen to me," she roared. "My daughters are not pawns. They are not tools. They are children, and they are my heart. I will tear down the stars themselves until I find them, and whoever holds them will taste the full wrath of my empire." Her cry shook even the bravest among them, yet deep inside her, fear was eating her soul. For nights she had not slept. For nights her chambers echoed with emptiness, the laughter of her children gone like a candle blown out. She remembered their faces, their small hands, their eyes that trusted her with every heartbeat. Now those eyes were lost in the dark and she was powerless. The council gave no comfort. Some looked away, others studied her weakness. And in the shadows of the hall, whispers of war began to grow. Far away, beyond the queen's sight, on a quiet world at the edge of known space, a small fire flickered inside a broken house. A human sat alone, a man forgotten by both his own people and the galaxy. His days were filled with silence, his nights with loneliness. Yet tonight was different. Tonight a strange sound had come to his door, soft as falling snow. He had opened his eyes to see two small figures glowing faintly under the moonlight. Exhausted, trembling, they had crawled into his arms without a word. And now, as the stars turned above, the two alien daughters of a queen slept peacefully on his chest, their breathing slow, their trust complete. The galaxy raged in fire and suspicion. The council burned with hate and fear. The queen's armies sharpened their blades, ready to strike at humanity. But the truth was hidden in the arms of one simple man who did not yet know that the fate of empires was sleeping against his heart. The queen raised her head once more in the great hall. Her tears glistened like shattered diamonds. "Find them," she commanded, her voice breaking. "Search every star, burn every shadow. Do not return to me until my daughters are safe." And the council obeyed, ships launching, soldiers marching, spies whispering through the void. The hunt had begun, the galaxy would tremble, and one human, still nameless to history, would soon carry a weight greater than any king, because while the queen screamed to the stars, her lost daughters were already found, resting safe, resting quiet, resting on the chest of a human who never asked for power, but was about to change the fate of worlds. On the edge of the galaxy, far from the shining towers of the council worlds, there lived a man the galaxy had forgotten. He was a human, alone on a broken planet, a place where the wind carried the dust of dead cities and the skies burned red at dusk. No family came to visit him. No friends spoke his name. To the villagers, he was nothing, only an outcast, a man who swept floors, fixed broken doors, and ate alone. He had once dreamed of being more, of fighting in the great fleets or serving as a soldier, but life had pushed him down, and the galaxy had laughed at his weakness. He became invisible, a shadow moving quietly through the ruins. Yet on this night, destiny crept to his door, silent and unexpected. The man had fallen asleep by a small fire, his hands rough from labor, his eyes heavy with tiredness. But he awoke to a strange sound, not the growl of beasts or the howl of the wind, but soft voices, faint as whispers of the stars. When he opened his eyes, he froze. Two small figures stood before him, their skin glowing faintly in the darkness, their silver eyes filled with fear and exhaustion. They looked too delicate for this cruel world, too pure to belong to the dirt and shadows. Before he could speak, the figures collapsed, their tiny bodies curling against his chest as if they had always known him, always trusted him. The man did not understand. He only felt the weight of two children resting on him, their small breaths warming his heart. For the first time in many years, he did not feel alone. But in that same moment, fear clawed at him. These were not ordinary children. Their features were unmistakable. Their crowns of light, their marks of royal blood. He had seen their faces once on a hollow screen in a marketplace, the daughters of the alien queen, the children the galaxy was hunting. His heart raced. He knew the galaxy would tear itself apart to find them. And if soldiers discovered them here, he would be branded a thief, a kidnapper, a traitor. The council would kill him without question. The queen herself would demand his head. Yet the children clung to him, their small hands gripping his shirt, their breathing soft and calm. They had chosen him, without words, without reason. They had placed their trust in his arms, and something deep inside him, something long buried under years of pain and rejection, stirred awake. He whispered to himself, his voice shaking, "If they found you here, then maybe the stars sent you to me. Maybe I am not meant to be nothing after all." The words felt heavy, but they gave him strength. He carried them gently to the small cot by the fire, wrapping them in his only blanket. The girls stirred but did not wake, their faces peaceful. For a moment the man allowed himself to smile, though fear still gripped him like iron chains. Outside, the night was restless. Shadows moved between the broken houses, armored boots crunched against gravel, and alien voices hissed through the dark. Search parties, hunters, soldiers, all moving with the same purpose. They were close, too close. The man's blood turned cold. He pressed his back against the door, his heart pounding. Through the cracks he saw the glow of scanners. Sweeping across the ground, red beams slicing through the night, a voice called out, "Search everywhere! The queen demands her daughters back. No places." The human woke before dawn, the weak light of the dying sun spilling through the cracks in the roof. The children still slept, their small faces calm, their soft breaths steady, their trust unshaken. He looked at them and knew he could never let them go, even if it cost him his life. The world outside was growing dangerous. Every hour more soldiers landed, more ships circled above, and more hunters walked the dusty streets. They knocked on doors, searched the ruins, questioned villagers, promising gold to anyone who gave information. The man heard the whispers. He saw the fear in the eyes of his neighbors, and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone pointed to his broken house. He needed to hide them better. He needed a place the scanners could not see, a place the hunters would never check. Deep in the ruins of the city there was an old shelter carved underground long before the war had scarred this world. It was dark, damp, and forgotten, but it might save them. The man carried the children through the silent streets, keeping to shadows, avoiding patrols. Every corner felt like a trap, every sound like a warning. Once a soldier's light swept across the alley and the man froze, pressing his back against the wall. The girls clung to his neck, their small hands trembling, their breaths caught in fear. But the light moved on and the danger passed. At last they reached the shelter, a hidden hatch beneath a pile of broken stone. The man pulled it open, the rusted hinges groaning, and lowered the children inside. The air smelled of dust and metal. The walls were cracked, but it was safe. He lit a small lantern, and the underground chamber glowed faintly, revealing old supplies, broken machines, and shadows that stretched like ghosts. "This is our home now," he whispered, though his voice shook. "No one will find you here." The children looked at him. Their silver eyes wide, their faces tired but trusting. One of them reached out and touched his hand, and for a moment the weight of the galaxy lifted from his heart. Days passed in silence. The man hunted small animals for food, gathered water from broken pipes, and gave the children everything he could find. They laughed sometimes, soft and shy, their voices filling the dark shelter with a light he had not heard in years. And each night, when fear pressed heavy against the door above, the children curled against him, sleeping peacefully on his chest. But danger was never far. Above the ground, the search grew harsher. Bounty hunters arrived, fierce creatures with metal claws and glowing eyes. They promised rewards greater than gold, rewards of power. To anyone who found the princesses, villagers began to whisper about the human outcast, about how he kept to himself, about how his house always stayed dark. Suspicion grew like poison. One night, as the man returned to the shelter, he heard voices outside his ruined home. "Search here tomorrow," a soldier said, his tone sharp. "The human knows something. He hides something. I can smell it." The man's blood turned cold. Tomorrow they would come. Tomorrow they would break down the door. Tomorrow the secret would be uncovered. Back in the shelter, the children sensed his fear. They clung to him, whispering in their alien tongue, soft words he did not understand but could feel. They trusted him completely, their eyes shining with hope instead of fear. And in that moment the man made a decision. He could not wait for tomorrow. He had to act. He studied the shelter walls, remembering the old maps of the city he once saw as a boy. There were tunnels here, hidden paths that connected the ruins to the far mountains. If he could find them, he could escape with the children before the soldiers came. It was dangerous. It was madness, but it was the only way. That night he did not sleep. He searched the cracks, felt the stones, listened for hollow echoes. At last his hand found a loose panel, and behind it a dark passage stretched into the unknown. The tunnel breathed cold air, carrying the scent of freedom and danger. The man whispered to the children, his voice steady though his heart shook. "Tomorrow they will come. Tomorrow they will search, but we will not be here. We will be gone, far away, where no soldier can find you." The girls smiled, tired but brave, their small hands clutching his. For them, he was not an outcast, not a failure, not nothing. For them, he was protector, shield, and home. And as he watched them fall asleep, their faces peaceful in the lantern light, the man felt something awaken inside him, something greater than fear, greater than loneliness, a strength he never knew he had. Above the ground, the soldiers sharpened their blades, the bounty hunters loaded their weapons, and the villagers whispered his name. The storm was coming. But in the dark of the secret shelter, a forgotten human and two alien daughters were preparing to step into destiny. In the great palace of the alien empire, the queen stood before her armies, her eyes burning like twin suns. Her throne hall was filled with soldiers in black armor, their weapons glowing with deadly light, their ships ready to launch. The queen's voice cracked across the hall like thunder. "My daughters are gone," she cried, and the galaxy whispers lies. They dare say humans took them. They dare say my children are hidden among the weakest of races." Her voice grew sharper, her hand raised high. "Then let the humans answer. Let their worlds burn until truth falls from their ashes." The soldiers roared in unison, their voices shaking the walls. The queen's grief had turned into fury, and that fury became the law of her empire. Across the stars, her fleets prepared to rise, thousands of ships armed for war, engines screaming, cannons loaded, the joyous Asian Sanzitsurs. Alaxi trembled, for when the queen commanded, whole worlds fell, but behind her rage was a wound that would not heal. In the silence of her private chambers she still wept, clutching the small blankets her daughters once slept in. Their laughter haunted her, their voices echoed in the dark, and every breath she took was filled with sorrow. Her wrath was her shield, her armies her only comfort. Meanwhile, far away, the human in the secret shelter felt the weight of that fury though he could not see it. Every day more ships passed overhead, their lights slicing the sky, their scanners sweeping the ground. Villagers whispered of destruction, of warships gathering in orbit. Soon the Queen's wrath would fall like fire on this broken planet. The human knew he could not wait. He had found the hidden tunnel beneath the ruins, stretching toward the mountains, but he did not know where it ended. It was dark, dangerous, filled with echoes and shadows, yet it was their only chance. If they stayed, soldiers would find them, and if the Queen's fury reached this world, nothing would survive. That night he packed what little food he had, filled a small flask with water, and carried the sleeping children into the tunnel. Their heads rested on his shoulders, their small breaths warm against his skin. He whispered, "I will take you far away, far from fire, far from war. I will not let them hurt you." The tunnel stretched for miles, winding like a snake beneath the ruins. Sometimes the roof cracked and dust rained down. Sometimes strange creatures hissed from the shadows, but the human pressed on, his lantern flickering, his heart beating with fear and determination. Above the ground the hunt grew sharper. The Queen's generals landed on the planet, their armor gleaming, their orders cruel. "Search every ruin," one commanded. "Tear apart every home, question every villager. If the boss' daughters are here, the human will pay with his blood." The soldiers spread like fire, their boots shaking the earth, their weapons ready to kill. The villagers trembled, afraid to speak, but some began to whisper. "The human outcast," they said. "He keeps to the shadows, he hides too much." Suspicion grew and greed followed, for the reward promised by the Queen was greater than any gold. Soon betrayal would rise. In the palace, the Queen stood before the council once again. Her voice echoed, filled with grief and rage. "If I do not see my daughters soon, I will turn my fleets on earth. I will burn every human city. I will leave nothing but ashes." The counselors shifted in fear, some nodding, some silent, for the Queen's wrath could not be stopped, her power greater than any single empire. Yet as her words shook the stars, her daughters slept in the arms of a human she had sworn to destroy. They curled against his chest as he walked through the dark tunnels, his steps slow but steady. The galaxy saw him as nothing, a failure, an outcast. But to the children he was the only light in the dark. The human did not know if he would survive the journey. He did not know if he would reach safety. But he knew one truth, clear and unshaken. He would never abandon them. Not even if the Queen herself stood before him with fire in her eyes. And far above, in her palace, the Queen's wrath burned hotter. Her fleets prepared for war, her soldiers sharpened their blades. The galaxy held its breath, because when a mother's grief becomes rage, no star is safe, no world is beyond reach. But fate was already weaving a story she did not yet see, for the daughters she mourned were alive, and their shelter was the chest of a human she had sworn to hate. The tunnels grew colder as the man walked deeper into the earth. His lantern flickered, throwing trembling shadows against the walls. The children clung to him, their small arms wrapped around his shoulders, their silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. For days they had traveled, hiding from soldiers, slipping past scanners, moving only at night. The man was tired, his body weak, but his spirit burned stronger with every step. He had no plan, no map, only one promise in his heart. He would keep them safe, no matter what waited in the shadows ahead. One night, as they rested in a small cavern, the daughters finally stirred. They looked at him with wide, knowing eyes, and for the first time since they had come into his arms, they spoke. Their voices were soft but clear, like bells ringing in the dark. "We were not taken by humans," the older one whispered, her words trembling. "It was not your kind who stole us." The man froze, his heart beating fast. The younger one nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "We were taken by our mother's enemies, those who sit in the council and pretend to be her friends." The man's breath caught. The council, the mighty rulers of the galaxy, had betrayed the Queen. The whispers of human guilt, the flames of war, all of it had been a lie. The daughters of the Queen had been pawns in a game of power, stolen by rivals who wanted the Queen broken and desperate. The older girl continued, her small voice steady despite her fear. "They told us to stay silent. They told us our mother would never find us. They wanted her to rage against the humans. They wanted war, because in war she would fall," her sister added. "But we escaped. We ran, and the stars guided us to you." The man's chest tightened. He understood now. The galaxy was about to burn because of lies. The queen, blinded by grief, was preparing to destroy humanity, and only he carried the truth, hidden in the words of two children who trusted him completely. But how could he reach her? He was only a nameless human, an outcast no one respected. If he stepped into her palace, they would kill him before he spoke a word. And yet, he looked at the children wrestling, ting against him, their eyes shining with trust, and he knew he had no choice. He had to carry them back to their mother, even if it cost him his life. The tunnel shook suddenly, a low rumble echoing through the stones. The man grabbed the children, holding them close. Above them, soldiers marched, their voices sharp, their scanners humming. "They are near," one hunter growled. "We will find them soon. The queen's reward will be ours." The man's blood ran cold. The hunters were closing in, their steps pounding closer, their weapons clattering. The lantern dimmed, shadows swallowed the walls, but in the darkness the daughter's eyes glowed brighter, their small hands gripping his. "Do not be afraid," the younger whispered. "We are with you." Her words cut through his fear like light through shadow. For the first time in his life, the man did not feel weak. He did not feel alone. He felt like he carried the strength of something greater than himself. He moved quickly, leading them deeper into the tunnel, his breath sharp, his steps echoing. Behind them, the hunters' voices grew louder, their claws scraping against stone, their lights piercing the dark. The chase had begun. But as he ran, the daughters clung to him, whispering truths he could not ignore. "Tell her," they said. "Tell our mother the council lies. Tell her humans are not her enemy." Their words burned in his heart, stronger than fear. For the first time, he understood his purpose. He was not just protecting them. He was carrying a message that could save his entire race. Above the ground, the queen stood at the window of her palace, her fleets ready for war, her voice cold as she ordered, "Prepare to strike the humans." Her generals bowed. Her ships moved. The galaxy held its breath. But far below, in the tunnels of a broken world, her daughters were alive, their voices rising in the dark, giving strength to a man who had once been nothing. The man whispered back, his voice steady, "I will take you to her. I will speak the truth. I will stand before he queen herself, even if I must face her wrath." The children pressed their heads against his chest, smiling faintly. They believed in him, even when he did not believe in himself. And as the hunters closed in, their claws scraping closer, the human tightened his grip. The truth was burning inside him. The daughters had spoken, and their voices would shake empires. The human reached the end of the tunnel after days of running. The cold air of night hit his face as he stepped out into the open mountains. The stars burned above like watchful eyes, and in the distance he saw the glow of the queen's fleet filling the skies. The children clung to him, their small hands gripping his shirt. Their eyes reflected both fear and hope. "We must go to her," the older one whispered. "She must see us. She must hear the truth." The man nodded, though his chest felt heavy. He knew walking into the queen's palace was a death sentence, yet he had no other path. The journey to the palace was filled with danger. Hunters prowled the roads, soldiers searched every camp, and the shadow of war hung thick in the air. But somehow, step by step, hiding in ruins, slipping past patrols, the human carried the daughters closer. At last, the towering gates of the queen's palace rose before him, guarded by warriors with blades that shimmered like fire. The man stepped forward, his voice shaking but firm. "I bring the queen's daughters," he said, his arms holding them close. The soldiers laughed with scorn, weapons raised. "A human dares claim such lies," one spat. "Kill him where he stands." But then the children lifted their heads, their silver eyes glowed with royal fire, their voices rang out. "We are here," they cried. "We are the daughters of the queen." The soldiers froze, their armor trembling, for the children's faces were unmistakable, their marks of bloodline shining clear. The queen herself was summoned, her steps echoing like thunder as she entered the hall. Her crown gleamed, her eyes burned, her face twisted with fury and grief. And then she saw them. Her daughter standing alive in the arms of a human, her breath caught, her knees shook, her heart screamed inside her chest. "My children, she whispered, tears rising, but rage followed close behind. Her gaze snapped to the man, her voice cutting like a blade. You dare touch them, human. You dare steal what is mine. For this crime your blood will stain my throne. Soldiers surrounded him, weapons ready. The man did not move, though his heart pounded like drums of war. He pushed the children forward gently, his voice strong. I did not steal them. I found them. I kept them safe when your enemies hunted them, and now I bring them back to you. The queen's eyes narrowed. Lies, she spat. Humans are greedy. Humans are weak. They take what they cannot earn. Why should I believe you? Before he could answer, the daughters broke free from his arms and ran to their mother. They clung to her robes, tears shining in their eyes. Mother, they cried. He speaks the truth. He saved us. The council betrayed you. It was not humans who took us. It was your rivals who wished to see you blind with grief and strike at the wrong enemy. The hall fell silent. The words of the children cut deeper than any blade. The queen staggered, her breath heavy, her fury shaken. She looked into their eyes, the eyes she had long feared she would never see again, and she saw only truth. Gasps spread through the hall. Counselors who stood nearby shifted nervously, their secrets threatened, their lies exposed. The soldiers looked to one another, unsure. The queen's wrath turned inward, her fury now searching for the true traitors. Still she turned back to the human, her eyes sharp, her voice trembling. Why human? Why would you risk your life for my children when the galaxy scorns you, when even your own kind cast you aside? The man's voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall. Beacon, they trusted me, because for the first time in my life I mattered to someone, because I would rather die protecting them than live doing nothing. The queen's soldiers lowered their weapons slowly, uncertainty growing. The daughters pressed closer to their mother, their voices rising once more. He is not our enemy. He is our protector. He is the reason we are alive. Tears glistened in the queen's eyes, her heart breaking open. She saw her daughters alive. She saw their love for the human, and in that moment she could not strike him down. The truth had been revealed, the lie of the council exposed, and the fury that had burned against humanity began to falter. The human stood still, ready for death, yet unshaken. The queen raised her hand, the hall holding its breath, and then slowly she lowered it. The children's voices had broken the chains of rage. The truth had spoken louder than war, but the story was not yet done, for the council's betrayal still lingered in the shadows, and the galaxy had not yet felt the storm that would follow. The queen's hall was silent. Every soldier, every counselor, every servant stood frozen, their eyes locked on the human who had carried 2 children across the shadows of the galaxy. The air was heavy with tension, the weight of war still pressing on every heart. The daughters clung to their mother, their silver eyes glowing with tears. But then, without warning, the younger one turned and ran back to the human. She wrapped her small arms around his chest and pressed her head against him. The hall gasped, the sound echoing like thunder in the silence. The older sister followed, her steps quick, her voice trembling. He is our shield. He is our safe place, she cried. We sleep only when we rest on his chest, for there we fear nothing. The words cut through the hall sharper than any blade. Counselors who had whispered lies grew pale. Soldiers who had doubted lowered their weapons. The queen herself trembled, her eyes wide, her hands shaking as she watched her daughters choose not a king, not an army, not a throne, but the queen's tears spilled at last, shining like broken stars on her face. She stepped forward, her voice breaking. I searched the stars, I burned with fury. I was ready to destroy whole worlds, she whispered. But you carried what all my armies could not. You carried their peace. The hall shifted, whispers turning into silence, silence turning into awe. The image was undeniable, unshakable, unforgettable. The daughters of the queen, safe and calm, asleep on the chest of a human who had nothing but his heart. One counselor tried to speak, his voice weak. This is a trick, a play. He cannot be trusted. But the queen's gaze snapped toward him, fire burning in her eyes. You lied, she thundered. You poisoned my grief. You turned my rage against the innocent. The counselor fell to his knees, his face pale with terror. The truth had been revealed, and the queen's wrath had found its true target. She raised her arms high, her voice echoing across the hall. Let it be known across the stars, humanity is not guilty, humanity is not weak. for one of their own has carried my daughters through the fire, and no throne in this galaxy holds more honor than his chest." The soldiers roared, but it was not a roar of war, it was a roar of respect. Even those who had hated humans lowered their heads, unable to deny the sight before them. The galaxy would remember this moment, the moment a nameless human became the symbol of trust and strength. The queen stepped closer, her crown tilting as she knelt before him, her daughters still asleep against his chest, their breathing soft, their small hands curled in his shirt. The queen's voice was low, filled with sorrow and gratitude. "You saved what I could not. You gave me back my heart, and for that I owe you more than my empire can give." The man's eyes lowered, his voice quiet. "I was nothing, forgotten, unwanted," he said. "But they chose me and I could not let them down." The queen touched his shoulder, her touch trembling but gentle. "Then you are not nothing," she whispered. "You are greater than kings, greater than armies. For even in the dark, 2 children chose your chest as their home." And so the story spread, faster than fire, faster than light, from world to world, from star to star, the tale of the alien queen's lost daughters found safe not by warriors or fleets, but by a simple human whose chest became their shelter. The galaxy would never laugh at humanity the same way again, for in the quiet heartbeat of an outcast, empires had been shaken, and a mother's rage had turned into peace. The daughters slept, the queen wept, the council trembled, and the human stood still, his arms wrapped around the children, not knowing he had changed the fate of stars forever.